Good morning, beautiful souls. Here I am out for a walk in beautiful, beautiful nature. As I've shared many times on this channel, part of my process of healing from fake non-duality is to reconnect to life, relearn how to live. So what's on my mind and heart this morning is what I do on this channel. And I'll talk about reconnecting to life. Just got some little critter trying to bite me. So I kind of do two things on this channel. I share about my own process of recovering from Neo-Advaita, and which I'm really more and more I'm realizing it's just a similar process to healing from a cult, healing from brainwashing, and healing from spiritual bypass. And those three things are all related. But the second thing I do is I share traditional Vedic Dharma and traditional Advaita Vedanta. So what do I mean by traditional? So what I mean is what I share is in alignment with the full vision of the spiritual path as presented in various Vedic texts called Shastras. It's not quite the word for scripture, but the equivalent of, sacred text. So that can sound kind of stuffy and traditional and almost religious. And that's actually part of my process of recovering from Neo-Advaita, is the recognition that what these, I want to say jokers, are teaching. I won't say jokers, but I want to. What these Neo-Advaita teachers are teaching is fundamentally different from what you'll find not only in the various Shastras, in the various texts, but it's also different from what traditional Advaita teachers themselves teach. So let's take Ramana Maharshi. So Ramana Maharshi would say, to some people, he would say, God, it's so beautiful. Look at the sky and sun. He would say to some people, all you need to do is let go of the idea that you're not enlightened. And to some people, he would say, you need to apply vigorous effort and meet every thought. With every thought that arises, you must turn attention away from the thought back to the self. And to some people, he would say, there's vigorous preparation needed before you even practice self-inquiry. And to some people, he would say nothing. He would just sit in silence and sort of emanate and say that silence is the supreme teacher. So he offered a very wide spectrum of teachings. So what Neo-Advaita teachers will do is they'll just focus on the ones they like. And depending on the type of Neo-Advaita teacher, some of them like to emphasize, well, there's nothing to do. Some of them like to emphasize, just inquire, do nothing else. Well, that's, and then exclude the rest, or literally attack the other teachings, such as you need to prepare. Depending on the type of Neo-Advaita teacher, it's like they'll pick one part of Ramana Maharshi they like and then ignore everything else. And here's where the full vision of the traditional Advaita path comes in and is necessary. And without it, Ramana Maharshi makes no sense. Because within the full spectrum, each of those teachings has its place. So let's start from the most basic, that preparatory practices are needed. Okay, that's a very traditional non-dual Advaita idea. Adi Shankara very, very clearly says, if you don't have the preparations, you can't do non-duality. But without that understanding, traditional Advaita is this progressive path that meets the individual where they are. But without that full vision, the Neo-Advaita teachers ignore that one and then just hop right to self-inquiry. Or worse, they hop to, there's nothing to do except just release that idea. So I'm literally taking a course in traditional non-duality with a traditional Swami. And I've actually heard of her teacher, her guru, before I even met her. Her guru met Ramana Maharshi as a child and then had a profound awakening experience and then went and studied. But why? Because an awakening experience is not enlightenment. It's just an experience. And it's like an art and science. Actual non-duality is like an art and a science. It's sophisticated, has sophisticated definitions of mind and self and moksha, enlightenment. It just has very precise definitions and a very precise path to get there. So I gave the example yesterday of I have this thing going on with my hip, so I got physical therapy, and it's like they give very precise stretching and very precise strengthening instructions. You can compare that to traditional non-duality, and of course it's going to differ for each person and each body. It's very precise. Like, you need to stretch this muscle and strengthen this muscle and strengthen this muscle and stretch this muscle and do this stretch in this very specific way. She's like, you need to flex your foot as you're doing this strengthening exercise. And when you're doing this stretch, do it this way. Like this, my PT was a woman. She knows what's up. She knows what's needed. Very precise, diagnostic precision to my body. Okay, that's how traditional non-duality works. It's this very precise science that meets people where they are and helps them take the next step. Neo-Advaita is like, just stretch. Stretching is good. If you just stretch, all your problems will be solved. Well, to go back to my analogy, no, they won't. You need to stretch in specific ways, and you need to strengthen in specific ways. And so that's just the body. We're talking about the ego, and the word ego is horrible. The teacher I'm studying with, she's like, let's put the word ego aside. They have very specific terminology for what people mean by ego, and I don't even want to use that word anymore because it's such a messy word. One of the words that's used is antakarana. And you can go look it up if you want. It means internal instrument. So that's why Neo-Advaita is just like a religion, because they focus on the parts they want and exclude the parts they don't want. So Protestant Christianity, the second largest denomination, and it started like 1,500 years after Christ and has little to nothing to do with what he actually taught. They're the ones who teach, just accept Jesus into your heart and you're saved. That's all you need to do. Well, to follow that dogma, you have to exclude most of the Bible. And you have to dance and come up with these complicated ideas to ignore everything else. And Neo-Advaita really reminds me of Protestant Christianity. Of let's obsess, not just focus, let's obsess on one little part. And yes, there are sentences in the Bible, there's about 9, that say, accept Jesus into your heart to be saved, or believe in Jesus. Doesn't even say believe, because that's a mistranslation, but that's a whole nother story. And a lot of Neo-Advaita is just mistranslation. And then let's throw out and attack the rest of the Bible. Well, that's what Neo-Advaita does with traditional non-duality. They're like, let's obsess on a few sentences and throw out the rest. And that's why I've told people, go read Day by Day with Bhagavan. And you'll see, it's Ramana Maharshi. It's one of the most unedited it's a record of his day-by-day conversations, and you will see that the shit you hear in Neo-Advaita satsangs has little to nothing to do with what Ramana actually taught. It's like 3%, maybe 5%, probably more like 3%. So this whole religion has been formed on like a misinterpretation of 5% of what Ramana Maharshi taught. Now, the good news of all of this is, religion's like the gateway drug. Not really drug, but it gets us in the door and gets us interested and gives us a taste. And then the true work begins. Neo-Advaita is just escapism. I was seeking escape. Traditional Advaita is really a process that, yep, sorry to say it, if you want to end suffering, it's going to require work. That's all I got for today. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And as I learn more about traditional non-duality, I'll share it. Big love.